Uji. Very nice. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Kenyan Historian. We are coming to you from the Grind and Groove in Karen, a very wonderful place. You see, I'm taking Uji. They have other beverages. You can have coffee here. You can have tea. I hear they also do lunch. So if you want a nice bite as chicken, you know I love chicken, you can also come here. But today we are talking about an event, a sad event that happened 46 years ago. So on the 25th of May 1978, a plane carrying Bruce McKenzie exploded on Gong Hills. It was just a few minutes after 6 p.m. Some call it murder in the evening. Others call it assassination. But before we talk deeper, or we delve deeper into the murder of Bruce McKenzie, let's first of all understand who Bruce McKenzie was. Bruce McKenzie was the only colonial era cabinet minister that was retained by Mzee Jomo Kenyatta when he formed his first cabinet after Kenya gained independence in 1963. So, how did Bruce McKenzie manage to be so close to Jomo Kenyatta? Well, it is understood that Bruce McKenzie was among few white settlers and colonial era government officials that read the wind of change and aligned themselves to African nationalists, including Mzee Jomo Kenyatta, Jaramogi Oginga Odinga, and others. And so he had a stake. He was so close to the people who were coming into power. That is why Mzee Jomo Kenyatta actually picked him as one of his ministers. And until 1969, Bruce McKenzie was Kenya's Minister for Agriculture. McKenzie was not your ordinary man. Some describe him as a wheeler dealer. Some say he was a politician who was a spy. They call him Mr Fixit. So why was he called Mr Fixit? It is understood that Bruce McKenzie played a big role in connecting Kenya with European nations. We are talking about countries like Britain, countries like Germany, and countries like Israel. So in this spy game and in this game that he played, we are talking about a person who was a wheeler dealer. Bruce McKenzie found himself to have formed a big population of enemies. They were as powerful as he was. They were as wealthy as he was. It is understood that by the time of his death, Bruce McKenzie had more than 20 companies where he was a shareholder or a director or the owner. So he was wealthy. And wealth, he was not just a wealthy man. He was this man who also helped the cabinet ministers, his colleagues in cabinet, to also accumulate wealth and become millionaires. But in the midst of that, Bruce McKenzie made a lot of enemies. So the death and the killing of Bruce McKenzie remains a mystery, just as the life of Bruce McKenzie. So who took him out is yet to be known. It has always remained a speculative affair. So the first person that people look at when they talk about the assassination of Bruce McKenzie was Idi Amin, who was then president of Uganda. Remember, Bruce McKenzie had just left a meeting with Idi Amin before his plane exploded. It is understood that the plane was implanted with a bomb, a time bomb that exploded the moment he hit Gong Hills. And when you read further, it is said that in the craft there was a lion head that Idi Amin presented to him. So in the lion head, or the lion head had been stuffed by a bomb, an explosive. And that is what took out Bruce McKenzie. But the question is, why will someone imagine that it was Idi Amin that plotted the assassination of Bruce McKenzie? Well, it has to go back to 1976, just 2 years before Mackenzie's death. And let me tell you, 1976 was a consequential year in the leadership of Idi Amin as the president of Uganda. While Bruce McKenzie was heavily linked to the Entebbe raid that happened in 1976, when Israeli soldiers raided Entebbe and rescued 103 passengers that had been hijacked. These passengers were aboard a French airliner and were headed to France from Israel before they were kidnapped and were stashed to Entebbe, Uganda. It is actually believed that it was McKenzie who persuaded Jomo Kenyatta to allow the Mossad from Israel to access the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport and enter Uganda. I told you the Mossad actually entered Uganda through Kenya to rescue the passengers that had been kidnapped. So Bruce McKenzie's involvement in the Entebbe raid is suspected to have angered Idi Amin. Well, Idi Amin distanced himself from the killing of Bruce McKenzie, but it is understood that the Entebbe raid had humiliated him and he wanted revenge. But even before that, do you know that Bruce McKenzie was Idi Amin's friend? Well, he was a friend of Daniel Arap Moi. But first, if I can take you a little back, Bruce McKenzie was a friend of Tom Mboya before he ditched Tom Mboya and became a friend of the Gatundu group, famously called the Kiambu Mafia, that coalesced around Kenya's first president, Mzee Jomo Kenyatta. So he had friends in high places in Kenya, Uganda, and many other African countries. And he was a link between Kenya and some of these African countries and European nations, where, as I told you earlier, we are talking about Germany, we are talking about Britain, we are talking about Israel, and many others, many other European countries. So at this particular time, after the Entebbe raid, Idi Amin was angered by the humiliation he suffered after the raid. And according to those who believe that Idi Amin is the one who took out Bruce McKenzie, he wanted revenge. So there are those who believe that actually Bruce McKenzie was taken out by powerful men in Moi's government. So who are these powerful men in Moi's government? I go back to my earlier statement. His death remains a mystery, or those who took him out remains a mystery, just as the man was a mystery. Well, so back to the Idi Amin's link. So the suspected agent in the killing of Bruce McKenzie was known as Bob Astles, a British-born spy. So Bob Astles was also the political advisor to Idi Amin, but he himself used to describe himself as an odds man job, a man who did odd jobs. In Uganda, an odd job had no description, had no meaning. And Mr. Bob, as he was known in Uganda, was left to give his own description of the job he did. Well, Mr. Bob was actually a spy man. So anyone crossing the path of Mr. Bob in Uganda faced the wrath of the Uganda Research Institute Bureau. Now, this was a spy network. It is believed that it was actually Bob who set up the research center. The research center. This is a spy network that operated in Uganda under Idi Amin, but it had a direct link to Bob, who is believed that actually set up the spy network and the research center. Bob and McKenzie knew each other for a long time. It is actually believed that McKenzie's company, the Cooper Motors, is actually the company that supplied Land Rovers to the spy network. So McKenzie and Bob knew each other very well. And it is actually Bruce McKenzie that supplied ammunition and vehicles to Bob's gangs. Well, there was a spy network, but most Ugandans believed it was a network of gangs that operated under instructions from Idi Amin. So when we talk about the relationship between Idi Amin and McKenzie, we talk about a relationship that went beyond government, because McKenzie was a wheeler dealer, and now he started selling equipment, police and military equipment, to Idi Amin through various companies. For example, the Wilkin company that he owned together with Keith Savage. Now, it is believed that Keith Savage and Bruce McKenzie made several trips to Uganda before the death. Keith Savage and Bruce McKenzie actually made weekly trips. That is what is believed, to have meetings with Uganda, and supplied even the radio network or radio calls and everything that included the communication network to the Ugandan police and some of the commandos that Idi Amin had set up. And they became close. So some people suspect that probably if it was not Idi Amin who gave the order to have Bruce McKenzie killed, then it was Astles. For them, Astles probably had started to feel threatened by the closeness that was there between Bruce McKenzie and Idi Amin, that he felt now Bruce McKenzie would have actually stopped using him as a middleman to gain deals in Uganda. And so he saw the need to have Bruce McKenzie taken out. Well, as an explanation that is out there. So on that day, the 25th of May, 1978, Bruce McKenzie, a retired cabinet minister, was taken out. Another aspect that people look at and say probably it was either Idi Amin or his political advisor, Bob Astles, is the event that happened immediately after the crash. Bob Astles is believed to have called Nairobi to establish whether the plane arrived safely. And that is where questions now started to pop up. Why did Bob Astles call Nairobi to establish if indeed Bruce McKenzie had arrived safely? And speculations were rife that if it's not Bob Astles, it was Idi Amin.